We are Alpha B Capital. That's the name of our company. Those are just our initials. And that's us. Within our company, I primarily tend to focus on operations and asset management, and then Fernando focuses on the underwriting, acquisitions, and the business strategy. It really complements our skill sets pretty well. We have, for the most part, we do a lot of stuff together. We're one of those couples, I would say, that tends to be an anomaly when we talk to a lot of people, right? Because they talk about, oh, I could never work with my spouse. But I think just because of our skill sets, we work together really well. And, we met in college. We are both chemical engineers by background. And, we've had the same car for the last 7 years, just one car between the two of us, just because we tend to work on so much stuff together. But there are some differences, like in the fun facts, I'm from Ukraine, but I love pizza. It's like one of my favorite foods in the world. We have an outdoor pizza oven and we cook it like twice a week and every time our family comes over. I also love gardening, and Fernando rags on me for having never seen Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. I guess it's a big deal.
I have Aragorn's sword sitting behind me right now, just so you know. I'm just saying.
You got.
And I got a map right here of Middle Earth.
You gotta watch Lord of the Rings. Yes.
I got Star Wars toys over there too for Johnny G.
I know. Yeah, some people get really heated about this.
No, I'm good.
Case in point, but and then Fernando, one thing that he hates is Disney, because his family's from Argentina, and his parents' American dream was always, that the more you go to Disney, the happier your family is. And so, talking to his mom, apparently there was like 1 year where they went every other weekend to Disney. And Fernando, when we talked about like family, he just basically, that was like number one thing he told me is, if we ever have kids, like, you're taking kids to Disney alone. And he is an ice cream addict. That's his snack of choice.
Love that.
Not the case for me.
Cookie dough or like mint?
Mint and cookie dough are actually my top two. So
good folks on the line tonight. This is great.
Love that.
All right.
Awesome. So we're going to take you a little bit through the journey of, where we were, how we ultimately came on Jake and Gino, and kind of the little bit moving forward. So like Anna mentioned, both chemical engineers. We started our careers in oil and gas, as our W-2. Spent, a couple years moving around Texas, from Houston, ultimately ended up in Midland, Texas, where, if y'all know where that is, out in the middle of nowhere. You're about 4.5 hours from any like major population center. And so we're far from family, we're far from nature, we're basically miserable out there. Decide, hey, we're not going to keep doing that anymore. So we got up, left, went from Midland, Texas to Denver, Colorado, because that was where we wanted to live, right? Awesome place. And through that, I had been big on what's called the FIRE movement, right? Which is financial independence and early retirement, or retire early. All of that. And so as we moved, I started introducing Anna to that, because we went from these big corporate jobs to these small little companies. And I say small companies, right? 100 person companies, and realized that it's really up to us from here on out to take care of our financial future. And so I start showing Anna a lot of that. And from there, she starts listening to it. She's like, I don't necessarily want to go move to like Mexico and live on like 1% of our like net worth for the rest of forever. That's not it for me. And she'll talk a bit about it later when we talk about impact and stuff. But a lot of these people aren't necessarily living up to their full potential. They're just kind of, they've got a huge nest egg they've built up. They're not necessarily doing a whole lot with it, and they're living like this whole scarcity mindset. And so she starts listening to, hey, within the financial independence area, what are people doing that she really is inspired by? She starts listening to Bigger Pockets, real estate. She hears y'all on Bigger Pockets, and then we shifted over to the Jake and Gino podcast when it was Wheelbarrow Profits Academy. We started on episode number 1. And so we started listening to y'all.
I'm sorry.
No, it was great. Honestly,
those were dark days.
Yeah, it was great. We started with episode number 1, and by episode number 6, we're looking up like hey, how do we reach these guys? Can we, do they, maybe they would like mentor us, or, maybe they can just point us to some other educational platforms, because we had no
We're not going to
idea
tell you to
that-
buy a van by the creek and get settled in. We're not going to tell you that. I promise you. Okay.
Yeah, so we had no idea that by that point, I mean, we saw that there's like, at that point, I don't know, over 200 episodes, right? But we were like, how do we get into this whole thing faster? And we're big believers in education, not necessarily traditional education, but just getting as close as possible to the people that are actually doing what it is you want to be doing. So that's why we started looking up online, and then just reached out at the time, I think, got in contact with Dylan and Josh at the time. And
within 2 weeks we signed. And I mean, we're both engineers, so Mike was talking about how he vetted a whole bunch of programs. We have a ton of like analysis paralysis, right? And it was the first time that everything clicked. It just worked. We're way too busy in our lives. Let's just go for it, right?
And I think, I mean, you talk about like the dark days, but for us, the main thing was just your authenticity that we heard. It was episode number 1, and it sounded like you were still learning, but you were already like willing to share with people. You were trying to put that information out there and get people educated and everything that you were seeing. And we really resonated with a lot of the mindset. And so those are the things that kind of had a draw for us in seeking you out as mentors, right? But then after joining Jake and Gino, obviously we got, this whole educational platform and the amazing coaching, and then got introduced to this huge network of people who all of a sudden we were like just plunged into this like ocean, right, of like thinkers, and it really felt like home. So yeah.
I think it's incredible. We're a little over 2.5 years into the program here, and all of our partners on all of our deals we found, through the community one way or another. And so just so grateful that you all built this, you put it together, and you shared it with us.
Couple of fun facts about Fernando. I remember Fernando telling me he takes massive action, Jake, and he said he's read more books in the last 2 years than he read, his entire previous life. So the massive action that he took, he was always on the group coaching calls with my wife. We had monthly group coaching calls for the couples. They also had an underwriting pod, so they're massive go-givers. So always giving back to the community, right? So they practice, they preach. And for me, it was a little sad to hear that they were doing the fire movement, because that fire movement is great in theory. You really want to get your expenses under control, but you are living a life of scarcity. You're worried about putting this nest egg and then being able to pull out only so much. And we don't want to live like that. We want to live a life of abundance. We want to have the opportunity to say, hey, if we want to spend money, great, but we don't want to be tied down to it. And that's what I think you guys, that mindset that you had, that mindset shift that you had from that scarcity to all of a sudden the abundance, and then being in a market of Denver that was really hot and there's no deals in Denver, and then going out and partnering with other people and being the ultimate go-givers. And like you said, on our first deal, on our first podcast, we were out there sharing all that advice. Well, that's what you guys have been doing for the last 2 years in the community, going out there and helping others, teaching others how to underwrite deals, and giving and providing massive value, and then being able to partner with others. So, you put out what you receive, and you saw us doing that, and then you followed suit. And that's why you're on here tonight. And that's why you guys were both able to leave your jobs and pursue, real estate full time. So it's a testament to what you guys have been able to accomplish as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And absolutely, it all ties into that last bullet point of impact, right? We saw the impacts that you were creating. And like Fernando mentioned, from the fire perspective, the one thing that was really important to me was why it didn't really like click or resonate in my heart was because of the fact that there were some people that were retiring early and not really fulfilling their big potential of leaving an impact in this world, because there is a purpose for all of us here. And if everybody just took a category, like everything that you do around Thanksgiving with the food drives, right, or the impact that you're creating in the community and spreading the message about financial independence, or 100-year real estate investor, right? If everybody just took a thing that maybe they were most passionate about and just made a change in that one category, whether it's a category of people, or maybe it's a community, or whatever it is, like all of us together can make this world a much better place. So Yeah, we'll just go from there onto the deal.
So we'll talk about the deal. Kind of looks a little bit like Mike's deal, huh? A lot of
beauty.
2-bed. Yeah. So this is in the Triad of North Carolina. The Triad, is an area between, it's kind of central North Carolina, really between Raleigh, Durham, and Charlotte, and it's really a market in and of its own, right? So I want to say about 1.7 million people total in the MSA. So it's a flourishing area. Historically, had a lot of overgrowth because it used to be textile, it used to be tobacco, it used to be furniture manufacturing. All of those industries have gone away, and as they've gone away, it was an area that was highly depressed for a long time, and now North Carolina and central North Carolina as a whole is just gaining so much steam with a lot of manufacturing, a lot of growth, a lot of biotech out there, the financial sectors, and so it's really an area that was underbuilt for a long time that's really coming back.
Fernando, did you get the townhome, the lot with this as well, with this price?
Yeah. So we got a vacant lot as well as 15 townhomes for 1.1. The lot used to have a single family home and allows us to rebuild with 6 townhomes per the permit. So
wow, that is awesome. Look at 1,000 square feet. Your rents are going to be about $1,000, so that's blowing out the 1% rule as well. I mean, that is awesome. Was this a mom and pop and owner as well? Did they just not manage this thing properly?
Yeah, so they bought the deal originally sometime in the late 80s. The father of this family, they only had 6 townhomes. They built 9 more townhomes in 1992, and they had the single family home on the corner. They've demoed that single family home, which is now that vacant lot. And they've owned it for a long time. The father passed away, and so now the kids have kind of inherited this thing, and they're not really passionate about real estate. They didn't want to keep this going, and so just kind of talking through the deal a little bit. When we took it over, average rents were $611. They had and talking about the seller of the property and us, right? The seller originally wanted a little under $1 million for the property, but couldn't find a buyer. He wanted to keep his 2 siblings that are living at the property there on really cheap rents, right? $300 rents indefinitely, and that crushes a deal. So we said no, we passed on it. Our partner did. He had founded Abhishek Parikh. He's on the call, so really appreciate all the hard work he put into this. Came back to it, almost a year later. They had redone the roof, they redid the landscaping, they redid some of the concrete and asphalt work. So they really changed the exterior look of the property, but the interior was still super dated. And so at that point, the sellers now wanted 1.1 after all that work, and they still wanted their siblings living there for a long time. So after some back and forth negotiating, hey, you're getting more for the property, and so your siblings get a cut, everybody gets a cut. We'll keep them on a low rent, not $300, but we'll keep them on $600 for the first 6 months. It gives them time to figure out what they want to do. And then long term, they can either figure if they want to stay, whatever market is at the time, or they can buy their own home or whatever they want, right? So, so that was great. So overall, like you said, $73,300 a door. We have to renovate all the interiors, and we'll start kind of talking through some of that. But as Mike was mentioning, the debt and returns.
What year did you guys buy this?
So we closed 3 months ago, or
April.
2 months ago now.
April of this year.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I mean, these price points, you guys, both of you guys
out.
work these things. I mean, they did the SPY technique, seller property you. That's a negotiation technique where they're actually listening and they're seeing how they can solve the problem. That's what's amazing. They're worrying about what the seller's problem is, and then the property fits their criteria, and then it's all about what can we get in the deal. So, I mean, that's how you do it, Jake. I mean, it's just an awesome.
Well, and the negotiation with the millennial siblings that wanted to be basement dwellers indefinitely. I mean, that's a beautiful job there as well. I mean, let them. Hey, we got to send them out on their own eventually. Here, we'll give them 6 months, and they got to go.
They're like late 40s. So I don't know if they're quite millennials.
That's the millennial mentality.
Yeah.
40's the new 30. All right.
Yeah, exactly. And back to the SPY technique, we were willing to give the seller the price that he wanted, the terms that he wanted. We're negotiable and willing to work with him. And so they were really willing to work with us. They gave us 90 days to close. They gave us extensions. They gave us a ton of time. So we got this under contract in December, and it took the entire 90 days plus 30-day extension to get this thing across the finish line, right? just we were in the holiday season, so it was impossible to get a term sheet from a bank. That took absolutely forever. And then, you know, everyone and their mother's buying, so it's impossible to get an appraisal through, and that took a long time. And then we actually had to play the part of title company, right? Title company that we chose was not good. And so we actually had to walk the closer through, you know, what documents each person needs to sign, who needs to be in communication with who. It took 3 weeks just to get closing documents once everything was ready to go, right?
One question, was it worth it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
and it, you know, and it wouldn't have been possible without the education, right?
Yeah.
It's because we've gone through deals before that were difficult. We had the patience, and we had now the knowledge and experience to be able to do that.
Yeah, this is our 8th deal that we closed. You know, 175 doors total now. So absolutely worth it though. We used a community lender as a bridge effectively. So we didn't get the amortization, that sucks, but we got 75% LTV with no in-place NOI effectively, you know, 4.25% rate, 12 months of IO, got a 6-year term. They were originally going to fund 75% of the CapEx, but the appraisal didn't come in, and they didn't want to give it to us, especially because when we first got our first term sheet, it was a 3.6 interest rate. But between, you know, January through April, when we finally closed, you know, rates were really up in the upper 4s. And so they cut us a deal on the rate compared to what the market was. But it was still
how did that go down? Were they kind of like, here's the rate, and then it kept creeping as you went because it took too long, and you guys had to extend, and so
yeah, exactly right. So they
sounds like a retrade.
Yeah. It would have been a retrade, but we already had such a great, you know, it's one of those things
you don't want to lose it.
Yeah. Exactly.
I get it.
Tanya asked, did you have to fight super high offers, or was that the asking price?
No, we were the only offer. That was the asking price on this one.
Yeah, but you know, we renegotiated, right, the aspect of those 2 units that they wanted to keep indefinitely at 300. And we're not sure that anybody, like a lot of people just probably passed on it because they're like, no. We were trying to figure out how do we make it work, right, to where it works for both parties. We'll give you your price, and now your 2 siblings will have more money in their pocket to do something with it. So
yeah,
that's great.
Guys, we had to let an attorney stay in a deal that we did last year for 12 months, and he's still in. We haven't got him out yet. So I feel your pain. You guys did 6 months better than us. So congratulations.
Yeah. But yeah, so, you know, overall, when we underwrote it back in December, we only thought we could get $895 for rent, right? That's kind of what we were pushing. And so that gave us, you know, over 10% plus average cash on cash once we refied, 20 plus projected IRR plus equity multiple. And that was going to be a year 2 refi. We put it under a 7-year hold, but the reality is we're probably going to hold this thing, you know, for a long time.
Yeah, we just basically, that was our basis for underwriting, getting to these numbers, just to compare apples to apples on properties.
It's another cash flow snowball. I mean, that's what this deal is basically. Once this thing's repositioned,
Gonna print.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gabe Katowski. How you doing, Gabe? Was the deal sourced from a relationship with broker Fernando?
Yeah.
It was, yeah. Our partner is our deal dog, and so he's in contact with all the brokers in town. It, like I said, it was on market at one point, then it went off market, and so when we got it, it was off market, you know, a year after they had originally listed. So
yeah.
Hey, that bathroom wallpaper's coming back. I hope you're leaving that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. We're not so bullish on it, so we changed it up a little bit, but okay. we don't like to be the first to the trends. You know, we're quick followers is what we are. So we'll wait on the wallpaper. But so the business plan for this property was just to improve the curb appeal slightly. Like Fernando mentioned, you know, they redid the roofs and the asphalt, but there were still like 15 janky mailboxes with no flappers on them, just strung together, right? Like all the siding had mildew on it. So it was just power washing the sidewalks, cleaning up the landscaping. And then in terms of the internals, you can see kind of what we were starting with, right? Wallpaper. A lot of the residents that lived in here have lived here for a long time. The siblings rent because of the fact that, you know, this touches back on that ethical aspect, right? That I think Tanya asked earlier, and, you know, really loved Mike's and Gino's responses to that, but it's exactly right. Like in this case, they were charging such low rents that the cash flow from it sure, it's great in a sense, but then you can start seeing how a lot of deferred maintenance starts happening on the property because these owners are just running out of funds. They don't have the funds.
It's
to
a
go
death
and fix
spiral.
these
They
issues.
stop fixing
Exactly.
things to stop getting phone calls to keep themselves alive. It's not
Exactly.
sustainable. Yeah.
Yep. And you know, some of the residents were okay and doing their own fixes to some of the units, right? But there's also
That
a
is
lot
not
of abusive
service,
residents.
and that's liability on your end. You can't go
Yep.
there.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So, you know, there were a lot of residents in here that were just also abusive to the property, right? And creating a problem for the other residents that were, you know, were good quality residents. So for those issue tenants where we saw that they were kind of trashing the place and everything, we just, upon takeover, because they were month to month, we just gave them a notice of non-renewal. And another thing to touch on is we actually retained the property management company on this property. The owners hired them about a month or a year and a half prior to our purchase. So they were kind of in this, you know, they were using them, they liked them, but you have to understand a lot of times with the property management company, if you're hiring a third party, they will do exactly what you tell them to do a lot of times. And so, you know, in this case, they were actually quite a progressive company. It's two younger people that are taking over. It's like a family business, and they're taking over. They've been in the business for about 12 years themselves, right? But the company's 50 years old. And so they're progressive. They're trying to use technology. They're trying to do a lot of the new things. But with this specific owner, they were being held back. So they couldn't do a lot of the fixes. They couldn't do a lot of the
financially being held back, you know, kind of like not wanting to improve the property. Do you have a meeting cadence or any recommendations on how you work with the third party?
Yeah, we actually do. I was going to touch on that too. So we, during this whole period right now in a stabilization process, we have weekly meetings, right, with an agenda set in place. It's funny, but so we're three months into the ownership, and we just met with the PM to go over these units and take a look at all of the renovations. And the PM was kind of telling us that she was bragging to her other friend in another PM company, like about our partnership. She was like, this is the first time where where I have an owner that has the spreadsheets where we know exactly what we need to do. Every single week we get together and we know, like, our communication is so clear. They tell us exactly what they want to do. Everything is written down. We can refer to that. We know exactly how we need to execute. And it's been a really, really good balance. So we have the KPIs, we have the metrics. Talking about increasing rent to market rates, the market is so tight that we actually, while we were in the process of purchasing, we started using one of the units that they turned, the very last unit right before they sold the property. They actually turned it and they did a really good job on it. And they achieved the $895 rents because the owners didn't want to push them. They were like, just, this already seems really high, so just $895. So we used those pictures. I marketed stuff on Facebook to try to understand where's our number once we started renovating. And I'll go to the next pictures, right? So we underwrote $895. We're achieving $1095 and $1150 in rents now. There's a super high desirability for this property. While I was marketing on Facebook, we got basically at the end of the turns, we got 50 leads funneled over to the PM that they just went through and processed. And they basically, from that, they already have a waiting list.
We had 20 tours the first 2 days.
Yep.
Right. So.
Guys, can I ever just respond back to what you guys said in the previous slide? Because it's really, really important. What you talk about property management companies. Sometimes we like to blame third-party property management companies, but you guys actually set expectations. So I want everyone to hear that. You set the expectations, and you also set the cadence of accountability with the third-party property management company out there. Some of them out there aren't to blame. Some of them want to do the right job, but you as the owner, you need to be the multifamily entrepreneur and need to drive the ship and need to tell them what you're expecting. Getting on weekly calls, being prepared, having the KPIs that you want them to show you. I mean, that's all important. That's what they want. They want to excel at their jobs. They want to be able to collect rents from residents that want to pay these rents. They want to have an owner who's investing in the property. And that's what you guys are doing. It makes their job a lot easier. And to be able to do weekly calls, and then maybe when this property is totally repositioned, you may go to bi-weekly calls, whatever that looks like. But that's really important, everybody. Don't always pass the blame and don't be a victim and say, oh, I can't find a third-party property management company. Because guess what? Anna and Fernando found one. They just had to really manage the manager. That's what we teach at Jake and Gino. And Mike had said the same thing. It's that wheel of the wheelbarrow. It's in constant motion. But once you're able to manage that manager and manage it effectively, that's how you're able to buy these properties, as you see in the next slide, blow that NOI up, be able to refi and roll, and pull that money and go into a next deal and continue to scale up.
It's a business and they are leading it. That's what I love most about this. Yeah.
Great, Jake. I love that.
And it was one of those things that we've learned, right? Our first deal that we closed on, it wasn't, we didn't have that cadence of accountability quite as well, right? And it's been a learning challenge. So when we used to tell our PM, hey, we really don't want vacancy, they were trying to do what this PM was doing for the previous owner, right? They didn't want to they didn't want to bump people to market. And so it was a lot of learning how to communicate with them, how to give them those clear expectations, letting them know that, hey, we've got the budget in place to get it across the finish line, right? So
yeah, and every deal you just have to think of it as like that's what a company is, and in a deal you are the leader. So you are an asset manager, and really you're the leader of this company, right? So and your PM is your partner, your PM is your executor, exactly. And so it's an amazing partnership, right? But you have to set the tone for and the vision for the property.
We didn't talk about it, but this deal is a joint venture. So ourselves, Abhishek Parikh, and then Jim and Francesca Apostolou, who are on this call. So really appreciate all of their support and work here.
Yeah. And that's another
Our
thing.
squad.
Yeah.
That's another amazing thing, like Mike touched on, right? The thing about JVs, like we love JVs, and it's just the fact that in a JV, all of the partners can come to an agreement and say, we just bought this property, let's rip off the Band-Aid and let's go in there and start executing the business plan, as quickly as possible. And you don't have to worry about necessarily, the distributions within those first few months that are really shaky and rocky, right? And it allows you to have a bit more wiggle room to actually figure out what are the true market rents, especially right now when it's just so hard to find comps because there's so little availability.
Where's the ceiling? I know.
Yeah. What is PPU, Jake?
Profit per unit, Big Daddy.
And what are they going to be doing on this deal? About $300 profit per unit at 18
I don't know about that. That'd be pretty good.
I think once this thing is repositioned and ready to go, between $200 and $300, I think if they get rents up to $1,100, they're going to be ripping this deal. So it's going to be like everyone's saying out there, it's only 18 units, but it's 18 units joint ventured and they own it themselves.
Yes.
This is going to be a nice little cash monster, and it's just a nice area.
Everybody be printing tonight. I love it.
I love this. This is great. Excellent. Great job, guys.
Thank you. And we also just like, one thing that has been so amazing to us to hear is our PM, when we were walking this, our other PM told us, I am so in love what you did with the property. Like I would live here. I would raise my family here. And
that's the question you got to ask. No, because here's the thing. Our regional said it to one of our property managers the other day, and this was so telling. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but this drives the point home. If you get on site with your PM or your regional, whoever, and you're not satisfied, you look them in the eye and say, would you live here if it's not up to snuff? And then just sit back and let them see what they say. Because look, we're trying to provide quality homes to our residents, and you need to make sure that you hold these people accountable and they're pulling it through. So I appreciate you so much for bringing that up. It's such an important point.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would live here in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So.